Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and we're back at it with another Wonders of the First video. This one's a little bit interesting. I am still toiling away on some pretty insane finals and semi-finals matches, full gameplay videos from the Dragon Cup, from the Las Vegas World Championships for Wonders of the First, and those videos are coming soon. But I wanted to make sure and address some interesting things that were making the rounds in the Discord today. First of all, Ramel posted something in the announcements about an interview with the first place champion himself, Alex Friedrichsen, Honest AF, and we're going to touch on that a little bit at the end of this video, because that interview is a really good read, and I honestly think all of you guys should check it out. But for now, there are a couple of interesting questions that Ramel posed to the community that I think might give us a little bit of insight into where their head is at and what they're looking to do in 2026 and beyond. Most importantly, they want feedback from all of you guys. What do you want to see from Wonders of the First moving forward? And that's where we're going to start with this first question. And Ramel posts here, he says, Saturday Wonders question of the day. If you could talk the team into making one product, piece of swag, or accessory for the game in 2026, what would it be? So there are a lot of cool things I would like to see. Obviously, I want to see some COTS branded merchandise, Call of the Stones, you know, t-shirts or hats, stuff like that. Most importantly, I would really like a hoodie. I really want a Wonders of the First hoodie, something really nice, and not something with just an image on the front. I think it would be cool to really go deep into the design of the hoodie and get some cool images like down the sleeves and something on the back, just some really cool stuff. The team is really known for trying to hide little tidbits of lore and personality in every corner of this card game, and I think it would be really cool to do that with something like a hoodie, where you could have like a hidden little printed logo somewhere that's easy to miss. Maybe it's a black on black ink on black fabric kind of thing. Just little hidden stuff like that baked into their merchandise I think would be really cool, especially if those things are hints about something to do with the set or something to do with the lore that the community's trying to figure out. And some of the things that they're hiding as Easter eggs in the merch could have something to do with that. But I'm kind of getting carried away, because even though that would be cool, and I think new playmats would be really cool, and sleeves, and a lot of the same things that I've heard a lot of people coming up with, the one thing that I really want is some standardized counters and dice to use when playing in tournament play. I think it would be really cool to sell a package where you have a D6 that you use for actions, but it's numbered 1 through 5, 0 through 5, with the 0 being maybe the pinwheel symbol for Wonders of the First, or some other symbol from the game representing the 0, and then have the numbers 1 through 5. And then do the same thing with the D12, where it's the numbers 1 through 11 for energy, and then 0, you'd have a 0, and maybe that's marked by some kind of symbol for the game, like the pinwheel symbol. But I think having custom die 6 and 12, 98% of the time will be enough to track how many actions and energy you're going to need at any given point in the game. I do find that those are the best size dice to use for those things, for actions and for energy. And so I think custom dice that represent those numbers and have 0 specifically on the dice, because that's the one thing that's always kind of grinded my gears when I try to use dice, is when I'm at 0, when I'm out, I have to take it off of where you normally track your actions and energy, and then things get weird because different players put it somewhere different. Some people put it on top of their decks when they're out, some people just move it off to the side. Sometimes that can get confused, like, is that die that's off to the side still representing a number of something? Is that a free attack? Is it this? Is it that? And it can get a little bit confusing. So I think if we just had dice that had 0s on them, that were specifically D6s, D12s, that we could use for actions and energy, so that when we are out of actions and energy, we can just leave them where they are at 0. That would be amazing. But you could make it a part of a whole set where not only do you have a custom D6 and a custom D12, but you could have a number of D6 that are customized for things you need to represent in the game. I think it would be really, really cool to pick the 6 most important counter types and have each side of a D6 be one of those. So you could have one side of a D6 be a protector counter and have an icon for that. One side be a shield counter. You could have one side be a null counter. You could have one side be maybe a free attack or a growth counter. I'm not 100% sure which of the counter types are most prolific and which 6 should get those slots. But whatever 6 are used the most and are the most common should get those 6 sides of a 6-sided die. And this set could include, you know, the energy die, the action die, maybe 6 or 8 of those D6s that you can use for 6 different counter types, depending on which side it's on. And then maybe, just for a little bit of spice, I think it would be really, really cool to have some kind of a counter that is shaped in a way where the stone can sit inside of it snugly, and you could use that to represent the last person who took the stone, because at the beginning of each round you get to decide who goes first based on who took the last stone, and so you need a way to track that. And in Tabletop Simulator there's a nice little flag, but when we're playing physically, and I noticed this even more so at the World Championships in Vegas, there's all sorts of different random items people are using to track who took the last stone, what realm had the last stone taken in. I think it would be really cool to have some little plastic piece or some little pedestal thing that a stone can sit snugly inside, that you could include in this package of dice, that you could just put the stone in, and so you could use that as sort of a baseline, like this is the thing that we normally use, especially for really big tournaments, so that everybody's using the same kinds of counters, the same kind of things to track all of the most important things that are happening on the board. I think that would be really, really cool. I don't know what that little tray pedestal thing that you'd fit the stone in would look like, but I'm sure the team could come up with something really interesting and really creative. If you have ideas about that, definitely let me know in the comments. And in fact, I'm really curious, and I think the team is really curious to hear what you guys think, what kind of, you know, merch, piece of swag, product, accessory, etc. you'd like to see come to the game in 2026 and beyond. Leave all of that in the comments, and maybe, just maybe, we can convince them to come up with some really cool things for us in the future. But the other question that Rommel posed was simply this: Saturday gameplay questions of the day. If you had a say in the next DBS update, what would be your top 5 to increase or decrease? Is there a card you think should be 5 that isn't? 5 DBS, he means. Is there a card you think should be 95 DBS that isn't? And is there an ability you think is just too dominant right now? So the first question, we already answered that in a previous video. I did an entire update video with my thoughts on what I would like to see them do as far as modifying the DBS after Vegas, after the World Championships, what cards I think should come down, what cards I think should go up, and some of my insights into what I actually think the team might be thinking and what I think they might be doing. So I did an entire video on this. I'm going to make sure to link that in the description and in the comments for you guys. Definitely check that out, because I go into way deeper detail on all of this stuff in that video, and I think there's a lot of insights to be gleaned there. But to answer this question very quickly, Kalis needs to go up because it just does too much. Luminous Scarab absolutely needs to go up because it can just be super oppressive and dominate the entire game for the entire game under the right circumstances. Sirius needs to go up, not because it can answer almost anything, but because it answers everything at the same time, as long as it costs 2 or less. And then you've got stuff like Noctarum the Lost absolutely needs to go up because there's way too many problematic interactions that card has to be such a low DBS. And then I think the other one for my top 5 would be Pastel Bloomdrake, because hitting 2 of those off an Old Man Rocket Ricker is just way too powerful, way too good. And it makes it so that RNG matters a little bit more, because if 2 players are running that same combo and one player happens to get Rocket in their opening hand and the other player doesn't, the player that does has a huge advantage just kind of randomly. So I think to kind of level the playing field a bit, if you want to try to utilize that combo, I think the Drake should come up. I definitely don't think Rocket should come up, because I think if you're using Rocket the way he's intended to, and you're trying to get stuff out of your opponent's deck with him, I think that's fair, and I don't think those players should be penalized. But Drake absolutely needs to come up, and even if Drake comes up, Noctarum still needs to come up, because there's just way too many crazy things it can interact with. It's way better than 10. But to move on to the meat and potatoes, the other questions that Ramel asked here, is there a card you think should be 5 that isn't? And is there a card you think should be 95 that isn't? 5 is... that's a tricky one. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know if anything specifically should be 5 that isn't right now. I'm going to have to think harder about that. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say no. If anything, I think there are cards that are 5 that should not be. I think most of the cards that are 5 are legendaries that you can only put 1 in your deck, and you know, they tend to have a higher rarity, so it makes sense to have them with a lower DBS for now to incentivize people to use them, so that enough people use them so that you get an accurate idea moving forward, at least from the team's perspective, of how good those cards really are and what their actual DBS should be. But now we're moving past that phase, which is why I think he's posing this question here. So I think a decent number of the ones that are 5 should come up for sure. There are some of them that should stay at 5, but more importantly, is there a card you think should be 95 that isn't? I'm going to say no. 95 is kind of crazy, but are there cards that should be a lot higher? Absolutely. Luminous Scarab and Cosmic Cataclysm are probably the 2 biggest things. They can just do way too much. Way too much. If you get a little bit lucky with your Luminous Scarab and get them down early, you can shut off most of your opponent's plays for the whole game while simultaneously shutting off their action potential, because their lands won't be able to be harvested. It can be insanely oppressive in the right situation. That being said, even though I think it's one of the cards that should get the biggest bump, I don't think it should go to 95. I think that is way too high. I could definitely see it being somewhere in the 68 to 80 range or something like that. I think 95 is a bit much, because again, it's the consistency of being able to get it early by having multiple copies that makes it so good. And even if you bump, you know, them up to 68 or 80 or whatever the case may be, having that bump for 3 cards in your deck rather than just 1 card in your deck still adds up to an insanely huge increase. So I think 95 is a bit much. But the other one, Cosmic Cataclysm, maybe? 95 is probably a bit too much for that too, but it just does everything. The fact that it gives you 3 flyers, 3 completely different realms, changes the math in 3 completely different realms at the same time, and gives you 2 free attacks is just utterly absurd. It gives you so much value with 1 card. You can be so far behind, and you pop a Cosmic Cataclysm, and all of a sudden you're caught up. Like, having flyers in multiple realms, each of those flyers essentially has a 50% cost reduction on their ability to spend actions to claim stones, because you don't need to play a new wonder to a realm with an action and then attack in that realm to take the stone. Your flyers are just going to automatically be in the realms, if you're smart and play them correctly, be in the realms you want them to be in, so they can just take a stone with an action without having to waste resources putting new things into those realms. So having that basically 50% action cost reduction for attacking and stealing stones off 3 flyers in 3 different realms, swinging the math in 3 different realms at the same time, and getting 2 free attacks is just insane value. Absolutely insane value. It can completely turn an entire game. And I think Wonders of the First is at its best when you're leveraging synergies and certain cards are adding and helping you snowball into your eventual game plan in the end. I think having just a random 1 card that you can get lucky and top deck and just play it and maybe just turn the whole game around feels less like it rewards skill. That being said, Cosmic Cataclysm is awesome. There are a lot of ways to use it that do require skill, and some interesting interactions that really help skill check the player. So I do like the card. I don't think it should go away. I'm glad that this game doesn't have straight up bans, but it should definitely get increased along with Luminous Scarab for sure. The last question here, is there an ability you think is just too dominant right now? Nullify. Nullify is the thing that I underestimated the most when I first started playing this game, because it didn't actually remove the threat. And me coming from Magic the Gathering as my background, I'm so used to having actual removal that actually removes the entire threat. And I underestimated how Nullify would feel the same in most circumstances. Like, you're going to remove the most problematic parts of the cards that are going to cause them to win or to accrue value, and being able to nullify things is way better than I ever gave it credit for in the beginning. So I think Nullify is running rampant right now. The best answers use Nullify, stuff like Deconstruct, Sirius, the Mallet, right? All that stuff nullifies threats, takes them out of the equation, and it's way more efficient to use that nullification to deal with problems than it is to actually use straight up removal, which is really, really expensive in the DBS for the most part right now. So yeah, I think Nullify needs to be a little bit nerfed, and I think just normal removal needs to be massaged a little bit. I think it needs a little love. So that's my thoughts. I'm super curious to hear what you guys think. And again, I go into way deeper detail with my thoughts on DBS and all of that in a previous video. So I am linking that. I'm also going to link the interview with Alex, the first place champion from the Dragon Cup World Championships for Wonders of the First. That interview is coming. In fact, let's check that out right now. So the last thing that I want to talk about really quick before we end this video is a post that Ramal made in the announcement section of the Wonders of the First Discord today, talking about how excited they are to release an interview with Alex Honest AF Friedrichsen, the dude that took first place in the Dragon Cup World Championship, the $100,000 Dragon Cup World Championship, against me. I came in second. I was the guy that he beat in the finals, and there is an interview up on the Wonders site, and Ramal talks about it a little bit. So he says, "At everyone, we are excited to release our feature interview with Alex Honest AF Friedrichsen, the player who went undefeated to win the 100K Dragon Cup at SCGCon Las Vegas." In the interview, Alex discusses his preparation for both Worlds and Wonders, the match that defined his run, how his deck came together, strategic insights into key cards and orbital choices, his family's reaction, and where fans can meet him next. Alex represents the competitive excellence and sportsmanship that define the Wonders community, and we are proud to spotlight his achievement. Featured interview, and then there is a link so that you guys can go check out the full interview. I'm not going to read it here. I did read the entire thing earlier, and it is a good read, so I would suggest you go check that out. I'm going to make sure to click to add that link so you can click it in the comments, in the description, so you can pop on over and read that interview. There's a lot of interesting things discussed. He does bring me up once or twice, so I think you guys might find it interesting. But I just want to congratulate Alex. He played phenomenally well. It was a very difficult match. That being said, I can't wait to run into him again in the future at the next SCGCon, hopefully, and get a chance to retake some of that respect, get some redemption, and maybe dethrone the champion. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let me know what you feel like in the comments, how you feel about everything Ramal asked, all of his questions, everything that he's asking about the future and what you guys want. Make sure and leave your comments letting us know how you feel about DBS and what they're expecting in the future and all of those things from earlier. Definitely check out this interview with Alex because it is a pretty good read, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck techs, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.